Yo, guys, I just want to thank you guys for joining in at the seat of the table today. Look, this is a topic that, in my opinion, has one of the greatest impacts, specifically in the African American community, and that's this student loan crisis. So today I just want to just talk through that. I want to unpack it. I want to have a conversation about it. Because I can almost assure you, a lot of people tuning in and watching this is dealing with some form of student loan debt. So I guess I'm gonna ask the first question I want to ask to everybody is, what impact do we think the student loan debt is having on our community, specifically for African Americans? And so I'll start this way, and then we'll just kind of roll this way.
Yeah, I mean, I just graduated college in 2019, so I'm pretty familiar with the process. You're making a decision that can affect the rest of your life at the age of 18. So I think there's three principal things that you need education on to understand how to navigate, and that's one, go to a college that you can afford. You can't have champagne taste on beer, pockets. So really evaluate, sit down with your parents, look at how much money you have saved, and based on your financial status, find a college that best suits the return on the investment, right?
Yeah.
Family education is an investment, something that's necessary. It's the first thing that jobs ask for when you get in there. So I'm not disvaluing, where you go to school. I just want, people to understand the cost, right? Yeah. So go to school you can afford. Secondly, we're in the digital age where technology is everywhere. So you can Google, find different scholarships and grants, tackle as much free money as you can to go to the school that you want. So that's also critical and important. Write all the essays needed to get the scholarships, because there's a lot of free money out there. And then lastly, especially I think when it comes to our community, is understanding standardized test scores. That's something I personally don't think it captures the aptitude of someone, but it's a standard in which colleges look at students on. So
correct.
Looking into, for our community, we need more, Kaplan classes, more ACT prep courses. Things like that can get you higher score that can land you a scholarship, right, at a school that you want. So I'd say those are the three main things as far as our community. It's, the education, the resources, how the road to navigate there to not, land in a pile of debt to get the education that you want. That's very important.
No, good point. I mean, what do you guys think in terms of like the impact that student loan debt is having in our community?
Yeah, I think we'll make really good points, but I feel like the impact really comes from the fact that the community doesn't have access to those resources.
Yeah.
And because they don't, they have to take out student loans. And then the impact comes after they graduate. So it's like all that debt is just piled on. Correct. And then the interest rates, and then they can't find jobs, and then they have families, and then bills. So it's like it impacts them, their families, and then the entire community is impacted because of that.
Yeah.
So if they have the resources and the education Will is talking about, I think that it would put them in a better position. But
not the case. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
Such a good point, Jay.
Yeah. So in terms of impact, I think for our community specifically, it's very far-reaching. One, it sets you back generations, like off the bat. Like the moment you have to take out student loans, like you got to start thinking about your grandkids, how that's going to impact them, right? Because the moment you take out student loans, I think the average student loan repayment plan right now is like 25 years.
Yeah,
like
that's crazy. That's a mortgage.
He graduated, like at 18 years old. So like 25 on top of, so you come out at 20, right?
Yeah.
25 on top of 20.
Yeah.
That's 45.
Yeah.
If you want to have a family, right? you see the cascading effect right there?
Correct.
So like, for me, like the simple fact is just like, if you could avoid student loan debt, just avoid it altogether, and we could like delve into, we'll touch on something.
And we're going to get into that.
Like,
we're going to get into that.
Yo, it off the rip, it impacts generations and just sets you back.
Correct.
So, yeah, I feel like it's a detriment to our community right now.
So this is and look, I've studied this, I've tried to learn this. The data suggests that Black people specifically are disproportionately affected by student loans than any other race. I remember I think it was the United States Education Department. They published and said the average African American person graduating from college, $52,000 of student loan debt, like off the rip. And that's the average. That's not assuming whatever. The other thing too, within the African American community, out of all races, we are the fastest growing rate for higher education, meaning above college. So a lot of them are going for a master's, but how are they funding for their master's program? More student loan debt.
Yeah.
So now people are going for their master's, they're adding on the 52 that they had on average, right? And then the worst part is when you look at the income side of the house, they're not it doesn't match up.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden you make $30,000, $40,000 a year, $50,000, right? You're making below the average, but the amount you owe in 25 years, that's literally a mortgage, right? So instead of being able to pay something off and have a huge equity at the end of it, it's like, yo, what did I
to cut you, but you just said something that most of our people do when they get out of college and get married or you know, whatever, progressing in life. They add a mortgage on top of the student loans.
Correct.
You know, so, you know, it's just, you're just compiling on top of it, and you can never get out of that cycle.
But well, why, how, and this is where I'm lost, even looking at that data alone, why is it that black people have more student loans, right, than Caucasian folks or others? I mean, the average Caucasian is 22,000. So now you're talking 22,000 starting, 52,000. That's a $30,000 uptick.
Yeah.
What do you guys think is the reason, and does our upbringing play a role in the impact of student loan debt in our lives?
I want to say for sure it's lack of education and mindset. I think for me, I wasn't even prepared for the college experience. Nobody told me how much 1 year of college costs.
Yeah.
Like, no idea. It was more like my parents were just like, okay, you have to get education, you have to, you know, go to school, maybe get a scholarship, but definitely go to college and get a good job. And then nobody had that talk with me, okay, this is how much college costs. This is the type of career you should probably pursue if you want to have a certain income level, and this is what you can expect. So I think the lack of education was really it. And then when I got to college, financial aid, the department, they didn't even say anything like, there was like a
Sign here.
Yeah, literally, sign here. And I'm just like, oh, free money from the government, yay. It's just like, I thought I did the fastball. I'm like, I'm poor, they're giving me money, this is great. But in reality, it's like, no, you're gonna have to pay this back, and not only that, but the interest on top of it. And like he said, it's like, sign here, you have to do the promissory notes, and you have to do this, and then maybe a co-signer, but it's the lack of education and what to expect, like, around it. Like, we need to educate our community really on what they can expect, how they can save for it, how they can, you know, basically be prepared for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is.
You talked about accessibility. Do you think it's very easy to get a student loan? Like, it's not hard.
Yeah.
Is that a problem? Like, should they make it more difficult to get student loans? Because you have that balancing act, right, where you don't want to prevent people from going to college, but at the same time, to your point, no one's really talking about it. Like, you just signed. So how do we manage that?
I don't think it's, I'm still a little bit contrarian here. I don't think making it more difficult is the answer. To your point, they just tell you sign here, right? I didn't know what a promissory note meant. Yeah. I didn't know what, you know, when I filled out the FAFSA, like, oh, this is actually not free money.
Correct.
You know, like, and then compound that with the fact that, oh, income brackets of your parents and all of that.
Yeah.
But then your parents don't make enough money to pay for you to go to college, but they make too much money to get actual aid.
Correct.
So you end up taking these loans, right?
You're really poor or like,
or super rich.
Yeah.
And you look at it from the other side of it, it's like, okay, the reason Caucasians have the you know, a lower education loan is because their financial status in life.
Bingo.
The lineage that they come from.
Correct.
You know, you understand what I mean? And they don't necessarily, there's so many opportunities afforded to them, like these Ivy League colleges and other colleges, like
Right.
even acceptance rate, we could start delving into the acceptance ratios of colleges, and like just the whole system is stacked against us just for even getting in.
Correct.
You understand? So I feel like the system itself, like legislation needs to change.
Correct.
to make it so that there's equity, you know, going back to a conversation earlier this morning, like there's equity in people getting these loans, or even the interest rates and just the burden of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like just the legislation, there's a whole lot of legislation that needs to change around that.
Yeah, I like that. So like even when I bought my first house and I had to sign a mortgage, there's a lot of paperwork, but it's by law, they have to tell you exactly how much you're gonna pay.
Yes.
The payment plan, like, so I'm going in like, oh snap, dang. So you can make educated decisions. I fortunately haven't been in a situation where I had to depend on student loans. But I'm wondering, did you have that, was that same requirement there? Like they walked you through, like this is exactly how much you're gonna pay?
No. I couldn't even finish. No. I literally can't, I remember sitting like in front of the computer and the advisor just telling me like, yeah, you'd have to take out loans in order to pay for the rest.
Yeah.
Like that's the only option. No work study.
Nothing.
No, get a job maybe. Let's call your parents, see if they, out of pocket expense. Like you'd have to take out a loan to pay for the rest. Okay. And then I get approved because, it's a government loan. It's easy. Like you said, it's easy to get approved for it. And so I'm just like, this is great. And then on top of that, you can get a refund check.
That's true. Oh, you didn't spend all that? Don't worry. We have
They don't say send it back. They're like, okay, you have this money left over. You can take it out if you want. And I'm like, well, the bills are looking a little crazy and I want to go shopping. So give me the money, like spring break in Miami. Yeah. But so they don't tell you about all of that. Education. And I feel like, like he said, other people,
correct,
white people, they have more access to the education when it comes to that, and the information, and their parents are talking to them, and they're more invested. A lot of people in the Black community come from single parent households, right? Or households where they have immigrant parents. Correct. So it's like they're not well educated on the process.
Correct. Or first generation kids going to college.
That's another thing.
Correct.
So.
I want to piggyback on what you said because I was fortunate to actually attend, private secondary schooling, coming from public school in Jersey City. The amount of resources that they were giving to us was crazy. And you've been part of those conversations where financial aid was an integral part of the conversation. Where they said, this is how much your parents make. These are schools that give the most money, that are the most generous. This is where you're going to apply. That was very much the pivot
a big part of the
conversation.
That's such a good point.
And I applied to a college that A, was need blind, meaning they don't look at how much my parents make when they make a decision, and then B, they meet 100% demonstrated need. So based on their calculations, based on what my parents made, they guaranteed that. So half the school's on scholarship. So even though I went to a really expensive private college, I understood what, as far as the financial aid they were going to give me, what position I was going to be in, so I won't be crippled for years on after. So that resource that came from St. George's, I was fortunate to have that, but in the same token, a lot of people aren't, right? So we can allocate those resources appropriately throughout the city, then a lot of people will do better.
That's such a good point. I remember my high school experience, I wasn't as fortunate as Will to go to a private high school, but I never remember my guidance counselor talking to me about like financial aid, here's what you could afford, here's the structure, here's the schools. You might get a pamphlet, you know what I'm saying? Consider Rutgers or something, like, or whatever it was, but it was never in depth. And so a lot of people are making these decisions off emotions or like lack of information. So that's a good point. Here's my question though, and I would love to get everybody's thoughts on this. Statistics does show our best chance to becoming successful is going to college. Like if you look at the data, people who go to college, when I say success, I'm talking about monetary jobs, right? So we have to go to college. I remember growing up, you had a choice, right? Either you're going to be on the street corner or you're going to go to college. Like those are the two options. No. The street corner. Or we're going to go to college. How do we get past this student loan issue, right? Knowing that like we gotta go to college. Like you know what I'm saying?
But do you really?
Oh, now you open a whole other can of worms.
I think it depends on the field. Obviously, the type of career you're choosing. If it's medical, you have to go. You don't want any doctors walking around, But I think that if we really teach children that there's more choices out there,
correct,
allow them to use their creativity, which is being really diminished in schools, that you know, maybe they won't have to go to college. They can be inventors, like how before. I let my kids read like these books, and one is about like great inventors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Black ones. And so I was reading about Benjamin Banneker, and he was 15 when he created the irrigation system. And he helped to survey and develop what's Washington, D.C. today.
Yep. Wow.
And it's like he was self-educated, you know.
That's so dope.
So it's like, why isn't that happening
Correct.
today? Like, what is the difference?
Yeah.
So
Are we creating a space? I mean, I'm glad you've read that book and for your children, but are parents creating a space that's conducive for this type of opportunity? Like what, I don't remember and I love my parents, they did the best they could. I mean, you can test it as well. Like that wasn't a conversation about like innovation. It was like, dude, you better go to school, get straight A's. And if you get straight A's, you go to college. Matter of fact, you keep going to school till you can't go to school no more. Like, you know what I'm saying? Get your master's,
you have a
get your
PhD?
PhD. That's it. Both my parents got a PhD.
yeah.
And all power to them. The reason why they did it though is because they grew up in a colonial system in Kenya where the British didn't allow women to go to school, right? And the thought was they must be holding something back from us because there's something in the institution. So what did they do? We went to school. My mother got a PhD at 27. Same thing my dad, got his at 31. And they taught for all these years. Now that's awesome what they've accomplished. I don't want to take it away from them. But there was this assumption that that's the only way to become successful.
Yeah.
And I think I want to dispel that. I mean, I'm not anti-college, but I do want to have a conversation real quick around like, what is the true alternative that we could be comfortable to tell our next generation? Because I know for sure we don't want our kids to go through the same student loan crisis that we went through. What do we tell our kids specifically to prepare for the next generation?
So one thing I want to tackle, so I don't want to disvalue education. Education is extremely important. I think what a lot of people misunderstand is that in college, you think that you're going to take the equations, the actual content that you're reading, and apply that to the professional world. That is not the case.
Yeah.
The intangibles that you're going to work on, that you can build on in college. So that's things like work ethic, things like the ability to retain information and apply it.
Yeah.
Practicality around that, right? Those are the skill sets that you're going to take. And I think a great example would be you and I, right? I went to a private college, you went to State University.
Correct.
College is your ability to go and curate a story in which is going to separate you from the next applicant to whatever job you want to do, no matter whatever field you want to do, right? So I may have went to Hamilton, but my story is, how did I get that? What are some of the things I had to do to put myself in a position to succeed, to get that next pillar of success, right?
Yeah.
Your story, you're a Becton Dickinson scholar, you're a 4.0, commencement speaker, right? We were both able to tell our individual stories. The other day, Hamilton didn't give me my job, right? Willie P didn't give you your job, right? It was the story that you created during that time.
Correct.
So understand, how can I tell my story? Understand that it's not the school that's going to get you the job. It's your story, how you're going to set yourself apart. Knowing that that's what's really important in the interview process, because how do you define success? Whether it's dollars, whatever it's being great in whatever field you're in, right? Those are the things that's going to make you get even further to that field.
So if that's the case, why is it we choose to go to a private school and spend $80,000 a year versus going to a community college and spending $1,500 a year to get some general education courses? That's a real, if it's about what I'm getting, right? Because I could tell a great story if I did 2 years at Hudson County Community College and 2 years at NJCU and got my business degree versus going to Seton Hall. I'm just picking on them.
Well, we have to reverse this myth that wherever you go to school, there's the value of the school, whatever that tuition may be, whatever how it's perceived throughout the country, isn't the value of you as an individual. I know people at great schools that are struggling to get a job. I know people who go to state universities that grinded, have a great story, and can land a professional gig. I mean, a really good corporate job, no matter if it is what you want. So that paper, it may be $250,000. It doesn't define who you are.
Correct.
That's something that you have to work on.
Correct.
And no school can do that for you.
So I was having this debate with my wife last night because I told her about the questions you sent, and we were just debating the whole student loan crisis, because we're both in student loans. So like we both went to state college, and then she went for her doctorate. She went to Jewish university, right?
Yeah.
I could have gone, so I went to New Jersey Institute of Technology, right? I could have gone to Essex County for my 2 years, for my gen eds, and then got my engineering degree with the other 2 years.
Correct.
But again, like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's not until when I was at school, I was like, oh, cats are transferring in to finish in 2 years. When I just spent what just happened? And dude, they save so much money.
So much.
Yeah.
So much money. And if I had known that, that's one thing, practicality. We could teach our kids, yo, you do not have to go to a 4-year college right out of high school.
But people don't want it. Here's the thing though, Horane, it was a bad stigma to go to community college.
Absolutely.
If you went to community college, it was because you weren't smart enough.
Yeah.
Essex County Community College? Don't be like that, child.
Yeah.
And we're trying to position ourselves to go to these, let me tell you right now, if you're not in Harvard, Yale, Stanford, right? Or whatever those top 10 schools are, it's negative ROI. Meaning there's no difference if I went to the University of Maryland, or if I went to freaking Marshall, or I went to Rutgers, or I went to Fairleigh Dickinson or Felician College, which costs a whole bunch. I just think, but we have to create a space, to your point, where we have to let our kids know, look, it's not always where you start, it's where you finish. And peep this, Jade. After your first job, no one will ever ask.
Bro, I gotta piggyback on that real quick. So literally, I'm interviewing software engineers. So next week I have a row of 3 interviews to do back to back. Interviewing software engineers, bro. And this thing it messed me up last week. The engineers I'm interviewing, they have sociology degrees and all of that. But you know what they did?
What?
They're like, oh, I want to change my career path. They went to boot camps, bro. Boot camps, 12-week intensive boot camps, which cost far less than a 4-year program.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they, I work for Disney, right?
Yeah.
And they're getting interviews at Disney, Facebook, Google. Right now I have one candidate who has an offer from another big name.
Correct, correct.
So these are also the things that we got to teach our kids.
Correct.
Let's sit and have a conversation. Look at this. Do you really know what you want to do in life?
Correct.
Yeah.
Here's some of the paths you could do. Don't look down on trades as well.
Yeah, legit.
Yeah.
That's
I
legit.
read something on Twitter last week where this guy was like, yo, he went to trade school. He got his electrical license, right? He did his 10,000 hours. He opened a business and hired people to work for him.
That's crazy.
Wow.
He's making half a
That's
million a
unique,
year.
Yeah, but we don't. That's such a dope story.
Yeah.
I don't think people in our kids know this stuff.
They don't.
And you have to remember, most in our communities, you had parents who didn't even think college was a thing. You can't expect them to know the hacks.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's why we're having a seat at the table. So let me ask you guys a question. And you guys already threw some of them out. What are some tangible stuff that we could tell parents right now who have kids who are scared as hell because of tuition cost, right? The fastest growing above houses and inflation. What could we advise them to prepare for that, one? And two, for people who have student loans, right? What's the guidance like for them? Because I've seen people tell me I asked them, how you gonna deal with that? I'm just waiting for Jesus to come back. You know what I'm saying? I legit heard that line before.
Yeah, I have a couple points. So some preventative measures, this is some of the first things I said. First and foremost, it's the age of technology. Google, find scholarships, write as many essays, get as much free money as you can.
Yeah.
That's one preventative measure. Secondly, find resources to get more help on those ACT, SAT scores. Like I said, it's not a matter of aptitude, it's a matter of how well you can take that test, product elimination, etc. Get those skills, right? Utilize as much as you can, so the higher score you get, the higher chance you have of a scholarship.
Correct.
That's some preventative measures. And then 3, look up what are some of the most generous schools. Look up places that you can land some success. And then also sit down with your family and evaluate where you're at financially, because how much your parents make is going to dictate how much your school's willing to give you as far as the need is concerned.
Correct.
If you can't afford to go to a high prestigious school with a lot of tuition, say, all right, I'm going to go in-state, not out of state, state institution, right? Go to community college for 2 years if that's something you need to do. Then have some sweat equity. Once you're there, work.
Yeah.
There's jobs that are paying anywhere from $15 to $20 an hour. 30 hours a week. That right there is going to be able to pay for all your pocket money, right? Your books, etc. And now you have some sweat equity. Now you're going to be more focused on those classes because you got some sweat in the game.
Yeah.
as well. So that's some preventative things that you can look into. I think once so let's say you're already in a position where you have some student loan debt, those are shackles until you pay those off. So you should definitely focus on having an aggressive plan where you budget out some money allocated to that loan to get that done as soon as possible, because the quicker you do that, then that's the defense, so to say. You can be in the office now and invest in yourself to grow your net worth. So those are some critical.
Good, I love that, man.
Where were you when I was like, it sounds like it's his job.
We're dropping that knowledge.
No.
Legit, I'm like, hold on, we're in the same household. I don't remember you learning this because I didn't know this. No, stop.
Seriously, I think he pretty much like said it all, honestly. And not only with parents, but incorporating that in schools, because kids spend most of their day at school, and I think that's a huge impact. And it's also like with their peers, what are their peers doing?
Yeah, for sure.
What schools are they going to? What are they into? Because they tend to follow, what their friends are doing.
Yeah.
So I think that that information needs to be in schools, and families need to have access to that as well. So
correct.
You definitely hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, I want to add on to what Will said because he said it so eloquently. But I'll start from the getting out of the debt part. A big detractor for, I'd say, our generation right now is social media, right? And the reason I say this is, post it up on a beach in Cabo, or like girl,
but you broke.
Now for real, like people take loans to go on spring break. Like I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know that was a thing either.
That is the thing. That is the thing.
Actually,
Will.
I didn't know.
So like, yo,
that refund check. Go ahead.
Whatever.
That's funny. I say that to say, like, don't watch people on social media, right? Live below your means. Like, seriously, take stock of how much debt you have, because a lot of people do not know how much debt they actually have. One of the downsides to having taking financial aid and student loans is you have multiple loans, and sometimes you don't realize that every year the interest rate changes, and it's a new loan, and you don't realize that, I need to consolidate these loans or figure out a way to lower that interest rate. Yeah. So take stock of the loans that you have. Yeah. Live below your means. Like, seriously, live below your means. Yeah. Because you have to, as Will said, like, those loans are shackles, man. You gotta get rid of them. And until you get rid of those loans, you can't make much progress, right? You're gonna be living paycheck to paycheck, and you're just gonna be bound by them. Going to the first question, something that I learned late in the game for financial aid is like, actually, you can go to the financial aid office and just like keep pestering them, networking with people on campus. So I actually did college in 3 years. My first 2 years I took loans, and the last year is like, I couldn't get a cosigner. My parents were out of money. So I literally wrote letters to the dean of my college. I wrote letters to financial aid. I got $25,000.
Great.
Like, just by different things.
That's dope, man.
I started volunteering on campus, got involved in like honors college and stuff. I was in honors college because of my grades and stuff, and I started going to their events and writing to the sponsors of these events, and that's like, I got 3,000 here, 5,000 here. That's dope. So you have to also be vocal about like your need. Correct. And keep following up, because again, to Will's point, he said like, not many schools actually, like, you know how many schools have these major endowment funds? That's true. And you know what that does? That's to help pay for tuition, but it's not publicly known.
Oh yeah, so I have that information.
So the schools are sitting on this money.
Yep, making money off of it. But me as a student, I don't get that benefit unless I keep pestering them and following up. So I feel like that's a huge, like, hack to the system like that. It's not publicly known. Correct. But there are methods and ways that these institutions can actually fund people's tuition. I think the one thing I'd add too is, especially for folks that have kids, right? You start saving for their college. Like start saving for their college. Don't wait till Don't wait till later. Don't wait till like never. Don't wait till they're 16, 18, 17 to be like, oh my gosh. No, I got 2 girls right now. I'm saving every single month so that the hit is less.
Yep.
And so here's the thing, like at the end of the day, if we're not intentional about preparing for college, if we're not creating a space, right, where people could be open, then we're gonna be in a tough spot. And look, everyone, for the folks who are watching this show or this episode, like if you're feeling the burden of student loans or you're feeling the burden of just the financial hit that student loan has, look, there is another side to it, right? Horane, you brought up a good point about making sure you have a debt strategy to get out. Like that's important, but also you have to think generations ahead. How do we make sure that you're the last person who's dealing with the burden of student loan debt? And if that's you watching it, look, there's hope. Our people specifically have had to deal with some financial trauma more than any other race, period, right? So I want to thank all of you guys, for joining this episode, specifically on student loans. I think it's killing us, it's hurting us. I do understand the importance of college. I'm not knocking it, but we have to think of alternatives. We have to be smart, and we have to make sure that that we can get out of this thing without hemorrhaging our lives. Yo, Barack Obama just paid off his student loans when he became president.
Yep.
You're kidding.
Legit.
I did not hear about that.
2006, 7, he paid off his student loans.
Yeah.
I'm like, the dude had books. He was one of the president. I said, yo.
Him and Michelle, bro, like
legit.
If you read their books, like they talk about how much debt they were in, like,
Correct.
and they were attorneys.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So this is crazy. Like,
Correct.
It's
hard.
It's hard.
It's hard. But look, man, I appreciate you guys having the courage to talk about this because I know you guys personally. I know that this is something that you've experienced. It's not just something you've heard or read. So sharing your story and the counsel and feedback was good. So again, thank you guys, man. Appreciate it. A really, really good episode, and I look forward to having you guys back soon. All right.
Thank you.
Awesome.